Silver Spectre. Stanley is a hard-working chap, forever content to shunt around in the sidings of Sodor station buildings. In addition, he takes a special evening train up to the town he helped restore, Great Waterton. He doesn't have much to say, but his silver paintwork often brings him into conversations. One crisp fall evening, he had just arranged a local service up to Great Waterton as usual. He ran around front with a cheerful pip-peep on his whistle. To his surprise, though, this was returned by an unfamiliar engine. A small purple tank engine, who looked a lot like he did, pulled up alongside. The engine grinned widely at him, but there was something about the glint in his eyes that told of mischief. Stanley decided to play. He courteously regardless. "Good evening," he said. "And who are you?" The engine's grin grew wider as he began to speak. "The name's Charlie, and Stan the man, let me tell you, you got a mirror finish on that shine, but it's a second place." Stanley was quite confused. Quiet. I need a French word. It's argent." Charlie laughed, leaving Stanley only more bewildered. "Say, why don't werewolves enter the Olympics?" he snickered. "Too much risk of a silver medal." Just then, the guard's whistle blew. Stanley quickly set off as Charlie continued to laugh loudly. The next day, Stanley was arranging his evening local again, and Charlie puffed up alongside with a cheerful whistle. "Hey, Stanley!" he grinned. Stanley very quickly shut him down. "Charlie, I don't have the time or patience for your jokes," he said with a huff. "Unlike some engines I could name, I have duties to uphold." Without another word, he wheeshed away with the Waterton specialty. Charlie was confused for a moment, but brushed it off to himself. "I'll get that silver stuck-up to laugh," he smiled. "Just wait and see." Meanwhile, Stanley was thinking about how he could get back at Charlie. Now, normally, he'd let bygones be bygones. His time with Thomas at the Great Waterton's restoration was proof enough of that. But there was just something about Charlie that irked him. "I really don't understand him," Stanley thought to himself. "I've all but told him directly that I don't want him around, but he seemed to ignore that. If anything, he's more persistent." Just then, he came up to a red signal where Thomas was also waiting. "Oh, hello, Stanley," the blue tank engine smiled. "Being really useful, I hope?" "I'm doing what I can," Stanley chuckled, "though I have had a bit of a cramp in my couplings." Thomas perked an eyebrow. "What do you mean?" he asked, concerned. "Do you need to go to the steamworks?" No, Stanley smiled, "but thanks for asking." "Have you seen that new engine, Charlie?" Thomas wheezed some steam in annoyance. "Oh yes, him. I had to escort him around the island last week, and pump my pistons, he was a troublesome sort. I can tell that much," Stanley muttered. "How do I make him stop bothering me?" Thomas pondered for a moment before he whistled loudly. "I've got it! You spook him!" Stanley was confused, but Thomas explained. "Last Halloween, Diesel and I had to take a special load of flour from the mill, and I got covered in some of it. He thought I was a ghost engine, out to get him," Thomas laughed. "He gave me a wide berth till Christmas, not a single taunt or tease." Stanley was still puzzled, but decided to take Thomas's advice. The signal dropped, and the two went their separate ways. The next day, Stanley was arranging his special when he heard Charlie's whistle. But instead of an annoyed groan, Stanley put on a worried face. What's the matter, Stanley? Charlie grinned. Stanley looked around at the descending night and the fog rolling in. There's a mist rolling in, the tank engine shivered. I've heard tell that when there's a mist about, there's a ghost about. One who doesn't take kindly to little engines like me and you. Charlie's smile dropped. His wheels felt cold. What? Stanley looked straight ahead, still worried. You best take care on your way to the sheds, Charlie. You wouldn't want the silver Spectre to steal your smoke box. Without another word, Stanley steamed away, leaving Charlie scared in the station. The evening mist swirled around Charlie as he crept through the night, eyes darting from one track to another. His journey took him through the whistling woods, where every shape and every sound was spooky. He wasn't feeling a very brave engine, and no jokes came to mind that he could tell to cheer himself up. Hey, Charlie, he quivered. What kind of a street does a ghost live on? No answer came from the silent surroundings. A dead end, he finished, trying to smile or even laugh. But the eerie atmosphere swallowed his attempts. Suddenly, a strange whistle screamed out of the forest. Charlie froze as a chill ran up his boiler. It's the Silver Spectre, he shivered. The whistle sounding again, echoing around, coming from behind him. Charlie shut his eyes tight, shuddering loudly as the whistle sounded one more time. Please, Spectre, he called. I'll be good, I promise. I'll never make another joke again. The sound of the steam engine puffing alongside filled the air. Charlie braced himself. Do you promise? The voice came. Yes, I do. I promise, Charlie cried out. A loud whoosh of steam surrounded the tank engine as the voice chuckled again. That's all I wanted to hear, said the voice. Charlie opened an eye and saw Stanley, standing next to him, a grin from buffer to buffer. You, Charlie began. Stanley stopped him. Charlie, you made a promise, he scolded, and the purple engine sighed. Sure thing, Stanley, he wheezed unhappily. But just then, Stanley was about to leave. Another whistle sounded through the trees. He was confused. Who was that? Stanley puffed. The whistle came again, closer this time. The two engines looked at each other in concern. It isn't me, Stanley steamed suspiciously. I'm right here. And it's not me, Charlie chuffed. The whistle sounded again, and a bright lamp shone through the fog as puffing drew nearer and nearer. And then there was Rosie coming down the track with Sir Topham Hatt. He was stern and very cross. Stanley, he boomed. Why are you here? You should have arrived at Great Waterton by now. Stanley was shamefaced. I'm sorry, sir. I just couldn't take Charlie's jokes anymore. That is for me to deal with, Sir Topham Hatt said. He pointed at Charlie crossly. Charlie, if one of my engines tells you to stop making jokes, then you are to stop. Am I clear? Charlie was sad. Yes, sir, he wheezed unhappily. Stanley, take your passengers to Great Waterton, Sir Topham Hatt boomed. Yes, sir, said Stanley sadly, and he puffed away. The next day, Stanley shunted his coaches when Charlie puffed up. The tank engine was still ashamed. I'm sorry I teased you, Stanley, he wheezed. It's just the kind of engine I am. I like to have fun. Stanley smiled. That's okay, Charlie. I'm sorry I tried to scare you. And I am okay with hearing a joke or two every now and then. Charlie beamed. Well, What do you call a dragon with no silver? Stanley thought. I don't know. What do you call a dragon with no silver? A drawn! Charlie chortled and chirped, and Stanley snickered and smiled too.